So as we dive into learning about the brain-friendly reading program, it's helpful for you to have a little bit of background knowledge about the science of reading, about structured literacy, about some of the language and terminology that we'll use throughout the training program, and also for you to understand a little bit about how this type of reading instruction is different from a balanced literacy or whole language approach. The majority of the training is going to focus on how, but this is going to focus on why. But before we begin, I want to encourage you to allow yourself to be a beginner, that no one starts off being excellent. You are engaging in a journey of acquiring literacy know-how. You're going to add skills to your repertoire, to your toolbox, alongside the children. And that's okay. This isn't a 1-month journey or a 1-year journey. This is really a lifetime journey because nobody ever stops gaining knowledge about literacy. One of the ways that we can think about children and their reading nationally is using this infographic that Nancy Young has created, that this ladder of reading and writing really helps us to be able to have a snapshot of what is happening nationally. Of course, it may look different where you are, and that's okay. But when we look at large groups of children, we see that some children in that green zone learn to read effortlessly. They're the ones who have taught themselves how to read. And the kiddos who are in that bottom dark red, they're the ones who absolutely must have a program like brain-friendly reading in order to develop the neural pathways that are necessary for reading and writing. Sometimes we might think of those kiddos as being ones who would be identified as dyslexic, but look how many children are in that orange zone. 40 to 45% of the kids sit in that orange zone. They don't necessarily have a learning difference, but they need to have systematic, explicit instruction in all the parts of the language in order to understand the code for both reading and for spelling. Those groups of children, that 60%, really need a structured literacy approach like brain-friendly reading. But guess what? The kids in the green zone are often advantaged by it. They don't know all their vowel teams. They don't know how to syllable divide or spell syllable by syllable. And when they do, their spelling improves. And when their spelling improves, they might use bigger words in their writing, and their writing is impacted as well. So we can think about the large groups of children that we are working with and see that so many of them need an approach like this. It's not just a couple of children in a classroom, but large groups of children. In fact, there is a convergence of reading research that indicates that 90 to 95% of all students can achieve literacy skills at or approaching grade level. Isn't that remarkable? We often don't even think that is possible, but that statistic includes students with dyslexia and other learning disabilities. That we know that students succeed when they receive intensive, comprehensive, and high quality prevention and early intervention instruction. What that means is the sooner that we start giving children the opportunity to learn with a structured literacy approach, the better the outcomes will be. But guess what that requires? It requires well-informed and well-supported teachers. The Brain-Friendly Reading Program partners with We Shall Read, and through We Shall Read, we're able to provide teachers who take training with ongoing professional development and coaching in a variety of ways. Jan Hasbrock tells us also that the most powerful instruction is systematic, explicit, multimodal, which is another way of saying multisensory, and intensive. And it's designed to appropriately integrate the elements of oral language development, phonemic awareness, phonics and decoding, fluency, vocabulary development, and reading comprehension skills and strategies. Brain-friendly reading is not just a decoding program or a phonemic awareness program. It includes many of these components. This is the simple view of reading. And sometimes it's very helpful for teachers to consider that reading comprehension is really a product of decoding and linguistic comprehension. That single word decoding and all the pieces that fall under linguistic comprehension work together in order to allow a child to be able to comprehend what it is they're reading, to be able to make meaning out of what it is they're reading. When one of those is low, the reading comprehension goes down. When one area is impacted, reading comprehension decreases. Getting to that root cause is what is helpful for children who are struggling with reading comprehension, particularly those who are in older grades, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. A way to expand on thinking about that simple view of reading is by using Scarboroughs Rope. And here you can see that there are many strands of reading that are woven together by the skilled reader. And a skilled reader is a child who can read with fluency and comprehend what it is that they are reading, that they are able to make meaning out of what it is that they are reading. That's the goal, for a child to be able to read something and create pictures and an understanding in their mind about what it is that they're reading. All of these pieces are important in that process. Now, brain-friendly reading really focuses on that bottom piece of the word recognition around phonological awareness and decoding and sight recognition. And we're going to talk about this rope at a later time. And there are also pieces up in language comprehension that brain-friendly reading addresses as well. We're not going to spend a great deal of time in this training focusing on the why, because there is a lot of free information out there around the why. Why do we need to teach children differently? What do we need to know to inform our instruction? The bulk of our time together in this training program is going to be focused on how. You're convinced you need to do something differently. What do you need to do differently? That's what we're going to teach you. So when we're thinking about this reading and spelling process, perhaps the child thinks of a duck and they think the word duck in their mind, and they can break duck into its individual sounds, which is not always easy. And a lot of children need direct instruction about that. And then be able to attach the letters that go with those sounds. That process of mapping the letters onto the sounds in our spoken language is called an orthographic mapping process. It's a process that happens in the brain as a child thinks of a word, has the oral language for the word, and then is able to map the letters to the sounds. So this process, you're going to see us engage in quite a lot, practicing attaching the letters to the sounds and attaching the sounds to the letters. When we think about what are the key elements to storing words in long-term memory for children who are engaging in that orthographic mapping process, that there's two key foundational pieces that children have to have in order to do that. One is automaticity, which just means that they automatically know what letters go with what sounds. That letter sound correspondence is key. And then the other piece is the phonemic awareness. Children need to be able to hear the sounds that are in our language. We develop children's phonemic awareness along with their letter sound correspondence in a variety of ways. And when a solid foundation has been laid with both of those, you can begin to engage in word study that is systematic and explicit, which means that we directly teach children all of the parts of the language, all of the letter combinations for all the sounds. And we also teach them in a systematic way that's cumulative. And the whole way along, we're inviting the children to begin to understand how you make meaning out of the words that you're reading. What instructional strategies do we use for this sound, symbol, and phonemic awareness? We use chart tapping and arm tapping or arm spelling. And those two key skills are used throughout the program with all ages. Those help the children to be able to map the sounds to the letters when we're doing our word building work and our repeated reading work. Arm spelling is a key instructional strategy where we break words into syllables and we break syllables into their individual sounds or they're chunks. We use the charts for the overteaching and overlearning of all the sound symbol connections that are available. How you use the charts, the sequence that you use, a strategy with individual charts, all of that we'll dig into. There are a variety of tools that we use in the Brain Friendly Reading program. And the good news is that those same tools get used over and over and over again in very similar ways across ages and across instructional settings. What you do whole group might look very similar to some of the activities or strategies you would use small group or even tier 3 or at home. So there's not an extensive number of tools that you have to have or an expensive set of instructional materials that you need. You need an alphabet chart. You need access to materials to make games. You need children's arms. Perhaps you want to use a salt tray for a multisensory experience that engages children. You need the training companion guide that has the sequence of lessons in them. For all of these different tools, there's a variety of techniques or uses, and you can see some of those here. We're also going to be thinking about structured literacy. I referred to it when we first started talking. Structured literacy, balanced literacy, whole language, those are all different ways of teaching reading. When we're thinking about structured literacy, we're going to use this house as a way of thinking about the work that we're doing. I'm not going to talk about it in a great deal right now. That'll be in another video. But as you're thinking about not only the principles of structured literacy, but the elements, maybe you've seen other videos about it, this is the infographic that we'll use to help us remember the key pieces of a structured literacy program